Here we are doing a mast rebuild. Taylor 220, the X series. Already had the mast off, getting ready to rebuild this whole ordeal. Had to rebuild the cylinders because when we took the mast off, I figured out that they were leaking. So we'll get those put back in today. I didn't show the mast being pulled off because I was actually training a new guy. So I was more focused on that, but now that we got the mast pulled off, I'll show you the cylinder rebuild. Welcome back to Fixed Dish, everybody. And here we are in the shop, gonna rebuild some lift cylinders for that Taylor 220 you're just looking at. Now this cylinder already got opened up. It was pretty rusty, so I struggled getting it open. But now that I have it open, I got to get this apart. So this should be pretty entertaining. And then after I get the cylinders rebuilt, we'll go back to the Taylor. We'll finish the mast rebuild, carriage rebuild, and kind of show you what it looks like when we're all done. Just look at that corrosion buildup, and you'll see it's actually a lot worse than that. It's built up in the threads quite a bit, so it's hard to tell like how crusty it is. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and pull this apart and get her all rebuilt. So I went ahead and brought over these wooden D blocks that we made, and it's just to set chrome rods on there so they don't get all dinged up while you're working on them. So I have that sitting on the bench there so we can transfer the rod over as soon as we get pulled out. Boy, you're messing up my shot. Get out of the camera. Look at this, digging through my toolbox and I'm not looking. Can't even get his own tools. Alright, so I know you see me putting air to the cylinder, and this is those moments where I'm going to tell you, do as I say, not as I do. So some of you that have actually rebuilt some of these hydraulic cylinders know this is kind of a calculated risk and are well aware of how much air to put to it. One of the smarter things you can do if you're not used to doing this is putting the gland nut back on, so that way the rod is at least limited on how far it can stroke out. So I was having so much trouble getting this apart, I thought possibly this, it's kind of like a velocity fuse. If the hose was to break and you have a huge outrush of hydraulic fluid, it would limit the amount that could come out, so it's more of a controlled fall. The mast still falls quickly, but just not as quick as it possibly could. So here's a look at it. It's not just a normal fitting, but so anyways, now with that out, I'm trying to pull on the cylinder once again, and still just as stuck. I found when I was pulling the top of this gland nut off that the wiper was gone, so there's a lot of water down in here, and as I get it apart I find out that it's not just water. It's like a water dirt mix, so it's kind of like a mud down in there. That's why it's coming apart so hard. So here I got Logan talking to help me out here.
Stop real quick. Get glared at.
What's that?
Get glared at.
Who?
Yeah.
He'll get over it. Where's he at?
Go shut off the shadow wiper.
Okay, ready?
Stop.
Whew. Thanks, Greg.
Talk to you, Logan.
So I had to get a third technician to come over and hold the table as me and Logan pulled it out. Hindsight being 2020 on this, this is one of those I really wish I would have rebuilt in the field. Some of these taller cylinders, I'll stand them up on end and use my crane to pull them out. It's a little bit easier. I've done lots of cylinder rebuilds before on this channel. I'll link a couple up here in the description, but yeah, I'm going to go through and rebuild this gland end first I got to pull out all the seals, and then I got to address all that rust that's in there. So around the outside edge, address some of that rust, wire brush that all off, and then a little bit of sanding on the inside. There's wear guides on the insides of these, so it doesn't really matter all that much that there's a little bit of rust inside there. The chrome rod doesn't touch it anyways. Alright, we're going to go ahead and complete rebuilding the gland end of this. So I got all my seals laid out. Hydraulic fluid is what they ride in, so that's what I'll lubricate them with. And here I'm putting the backup ring on the gland end. Backup ring on what seals the gland to the tube. Then the O-ring. Here I have the compression seal that I'm going to go ahead and get pushed inside here. And then this last one is the wiper, and that goes on top. That actually will help shed away moisture and dirt off the chrome rod so it doesn't pull it down in the cylinder. So right here I'm going to go ahead and put those compression rings on, kind of give you a close-up, sort of a better look at how they go on. As you put them on, it deforms and you have to resize them back down. Otherwise, putting it back into the cylinder tube is almost impossible without damaging them. So I'm going to show you how I get them on and then how I resize them so that way it goes back in the tube without getting damaged. Right here where the band is, where it cinches down, in between here and this side, there's a section where it like clumps up the piston compressor. So I stuff a towel down in there, so that way it has more material to push down against it to squeeze it down. And then after that resizes it, I have this wear guide to put on there, and then we can start putting it back together.
Eyeballer angle, looking good. Right there. Ready? Yep. Want me to hit it? Should get it.
That's right, I have the gland up inside the tube, and I'm just using the dead blow to kind of force it forward as I try threading it in. And I usually have really good success doing this. I don't have to try too hard. And as you can see, I got the thread started. And just using one of those hydraulic cylinder spanner wrenches, just thread her all the way down in as far as you can get it, and you have to use kind of a dead blow on it at the end to seat it down. Now this one does use a nylon ball to lock it in, which you'll use the set screw to force the nylon ball down to the threads so it's kind of stuck, and then it can't back itself off. Alright, so that one's done. Got one more to do. Alright, so we're installing these caps to hold the rollers in. That's what I'm doing right there. This next one, got the brand new rollers in place. And after you install these, they get blue Loctited in, and then you stake them to prevent it from backing out. That's what we're gonna do here. Go with a little bit of a mast application, a couple dots. Don't need a lot because it's getting staked in place. I hand feed them all in because Lord knows I don't need to cross thread these things at this point in the rebuild. Trying to cause my own problems, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, get those all hand started there. Run these all in. And we'll put it right in the crevice between them. Then we'll stake these. So we're going to go ahead and do this to each and every one of them. And then we're going to start putting this back together because I already got the blocks in here and I have them greased in place. Grease acts like glue a little bit. And I'll show you how this goes back together. If you made it this far into the video, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button. And if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. And drop a comment down below. I do read all of them and I do try to reply to everybody. Alright, so we got both sets of rollers and the shims or the wear blocks installed. So now this is the top wear block and stop. And what we need to do is get the block installed, the block holder, and then this gets shimmed so it's tight. So we got the bolt ran in there so it holds the holder. We would leave a gap here and we'd shim this until it's tight. And ideally you want to make it. So the customer started banging in the background, so you really can't hear me. But what I was trying to say is you want to shim the blocks tight and equal on both sides. And you also want to make sure that the mast can slide up and down with relatively small amount of force. But you also need it to be tight. These shims right here are 16 gauge, and you want to make it to where you can't get another one in, basically, but can still move the mast up and down with a relative amount of ease. Okay, so I got it pushed in there, and unfortunately I had some gapping, so I had to break these loose, slide in another shim, and now I got to put it all back together. Torqued all these, staked them. Let's see if I can get in the right spot. You see I staked them in the corners. Same thing there. So anyways, time to put it back together. Alright, got that mostly pulled back together. I gotta put the stop blocks back in. But my extra shim paid off, and then I use a come along to tug the two pieces together. So anyways, nice and tight now. Not too tight, but it's tight enough. So now I gotta just finish pulling these together, put my stop blocks in, and then I will offload my cylinders and install those. Probably won't get this put back on today, but we'll see. Alright, so we got the crane out, we got my cylinder out, getting ready to drop this in here. Hopefully we can do this with some reasonable amount of ease. So right here, I'm finishing pulling the two sections together because with the cylinders in there, the actual tops of the rods fit into the upper portion of the inner rail, and then it's bolted in there tight. And that's actually what does the lifting and lowering of the inner rail, is the lift cylinders themselves. So here we are with the mast completed. I have it all back together. It's all bolted tight. Got the chains back through the top, the hoses routed where they're supposed to be. I have some of the loose ends zip tied together. And then we'll go ahead and lift this up. To give some context, this mast weighs approximately 10 to 12,000 pounds, which is equivalent to like 2 to 3 full-size vehicles, all in this small area. A lot of people don't realize how dense and how heavy some of these objects are. And when you do a lift like this, you want to make sure everything's tight, secure, out of the way. And so as I start to do my pick here, I'm making sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. Everything is taut and under tension, nothing's slacked, and that I maintain a vertical lift the entire time. So I have to actually traverse the crane while lifting to make sure I'm lifting vertical the entire time. So here's a look from underneath. I'm putting the mast caps on the mast. The mast sits on a pin that's greased. This is also called a trunnion. And I'm putting the caps on. These will get torqued down to 600 foot-pound. So I'm getting the cap bolts ran in. Unfortunately for this one, I can get easy access to the rear bolt. This front one's kind of a pain in the butt. But anyways, I'll get those ran in, kind of started, and then we'll torque them down. 600 foot-pounds. There we go. 600. So this part is the lift carriage. This is what will go inside that mast that I just rebuilt. I'm rebuilding this part as well. It is done much the same as the mast. It's got four rollers and 4 glide blocks or poly blocking, and the poly blocking has to be shimmed into the rail just the same. I'm not going over that in this video just for the simple fact that it takes forever to do that part, mainly because you have to put the carriage into the main mast rail several times while checking the shims. You can measure and get very close, but when you're talking 16 gauge shims, it's hard to tell without actually putting it in place. But yeah, here we are finishing this portion right here, and then we're going to put the carriage up inside there. New rollers in, greased, peened over. Greased and peened over. Now we're going to put the carriage on. See, this is doable with you guys watching. So this part's kind of interesting, putting the carriage up inside the mast. You drive the forklift up to it, and you can get some relative idea of how close you are. So I'll get to where I can see if the rollers are somewhat lined up with the inner rail. Here we are lifting the inner rail up. And I get it above the carriage, and then I'll drive in over top of that carriage, and then we're going to try to fit it down inside there. Now those poly blocking that I had shimmed in there, they're shimmed out to be within a 16 gauge shim of tight inside of the carriage. To give you some context, a 16 gauge shim is like a 1/16 of an inch. So here you are taking this massive, 40,000 pound forklift with a 10,000 pound mast and a 4,000 or 5,000 pound carriage, and you're basically trying to thread a needle 1/16 of an inch and get that carriage up inside there so everything stays tight. Alrighty, so that's about it for the old Taylor 220. Got the mast completely rebuilt. I didn't show that part, but I got the side shift wear blocks and wear pads up here swapped out, mainly because I was just trying to get this all done. But those are all swapped out, and made sure all the functions work, no leaks, everything routed correctly. You can see I balanced everything to make sure everything's tight, secure, nothing super out of the ordinary, and then I kind of greased all the joints too. So ready to put this back into service And as I always say, we'll see you next time on Fixed Ish.